Hello, I'm Robin, and welcome to BookSpin. The Crystal World by J.G. Ballard, first published 1966. This is the first book that I've read by this author, and I have been looking forward to it for quite a long time. Unfortunately, though, it was a bit of a disappointing read for me, and I'll go into the reasons why shortly, but it does also have some merits that I think are worth talking about. So, just to put this book into context briefly, J.G. Ballard was a surrealist science fiction writer who came to prominence during the New Wave period of the 1960s and 70s, and this is one of his best known works from that time. In this story, the central character is a man called Sanders, who is an English doctor who treats leprosy patients in a remote community in Central Africa. This novel follows him as he tries to make contact with a former love interest who has disappeared somewhere in the forest. A forest that is undergoing a bizarre and dangerous transformation as the jungle is becoming crystallized. That is to say, there's some mysterious force that's turning everything into crystal. The trees, the animals, the birds, and even people, and this process is spreading with inexorable speed. This is thus an apocalyptic story, and in fact it's stated that this process is taking place in other parts of the world too, such as the Florida Everglades and the marshes of Eastern Europe, and so this is truly a global crisis. This is set in a world rapidly being made unrecognizable by some radical ecological disaster. And this is in common with other Ballard novels from around the time, such as The Drowned World and The Burning World. So let me tell you what I liked about this novel. I think that the premise, the surrealist apocalyptic premise, is really fascinating, and it's such an intriguing and original idea that goes beyond your traditional apocalyptic disaster narratives. You know, things like nuclear war, deadly pandemics, and so on. And this is what attracted me to pick up this book in the first place. So credit to the author for coming up with this idea. Secondly, this book contains some very rich prose full of beautiful and haunting imagery, especially when describing the crystallized forest, which is full of remarkable hallucinatory images of both living and non-living objects being transfigured into glittering jewels. So, for example, there's one scene in which Ballard describes a huge crocodile whose skin has become so encased in crystals that it can barely move, and whose eyes have been transformed into crystalline rubies. As it lurches through the water, it sheds layers of crystal behind it. So things like this are pretty cool to read, and these were the sections that I most enjoyed throughout the novel. However, ultimately that was not enough for me to really enjoy this book. There were just too many flaws. The main problem, I think, is it suffers from flat and uninteresting characters and a lack of engaging plot. The protagonist is a really boring character, in my opinion. He lacks charisma and does not seem to have any strong motivation throughout the story. And the supporting characters are equally forgettable. Because of this, the interpersonal conflicts throughout the story lacked any dramatic tension for me. I think all the main characters are psychologically maladjusted in some way, and that's definitely the kind of characterization that the writer was going for, but they were never explored deeply enough for me to really care about any of them. And what's more, the story was just not very interesting. It's very slow paced, and the plot never succeeded in really grabbing my attention outside of the bits where the crystallized world are being portrayed in such intricate detail. And for a science fiction novel, there's actually very little explanation for the reason behind this whole crystallization process. And the parts that do go into this, they seem vague and confused. It seems to be some kind of weird astronomical phenomenon that is causing things to leave time shadows behind them wherever they go. And these time shadows are made up of crystal. That's about as much as I got or understood. I think that's what the author is trying to say. There is one page in the book with an info dump explaining all this, and it's couched in scientific mumbo-jumbo terms such as the leaking of time, anti-time, and the depletion of the time store, whatever that's supposed to mean. For the most part, though, Ballard never really explains what's going on. It's also worth mentioning that there's quite a lot of outdated and racist language throughout this book, which is probably a product of its time, but it does make for some rather uncomfortable reading. The African characters in particular are frequently dehumanized, and this is one aspect of the book that really hasn't aged well. So overall, this was a bit of a disappointing read for me, and it does contain some very beautiful and surreal descriptions, as I say, but that was just not enough for me to really enjoy this book. So I'm giving it a score of 2 stars. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you've read The Crystal World or indeed any other J.G. Ballard's works. I'd love to hear about it. BookSpinner time again. We have a couple of new titles in the library. These include The 6 Directions of Space, which is a novella by Alistair Reynolds that I picked up quite recently, and 1 Million Tomorrows by Bob Shaw, which is a novel about immortality. So let's see what I'm going to read next. Wayfarer's Quartet. Okay, so this is the 3rd book in the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers, and this one is called Record of a Spaceborne Few. Now, I just recently read book 2, which is A Closed and Common Orbit, and I really loved that one, so I'm looking forward to getting back into this world. Let's see what it says on the back. Centuries after the last humans left Earth, the Exodus fleet is a living relic, a place many are from but few outsiders have seen. Humanity has finally been accepted into the galactic community, but while this has opened doors for many, those who have not yet left for alien cities fear that their carefully cultivated way of life is under threat. Tessa chose to stay home when her brother Ashby left for the stars, but has to question that decision when a position in the fleet is threatened. Kip, a reluctant young apprentice, itches for change but doesn't know where to find it. Sawyer, a lost and lonely newcomer, is just looking for a place to belong. And when the disaster rocks this already fragile community, those Exodans who still call the fleet their home can no longer avoid the inescapable question, what is the purpose of a ship that has reached its destination? So Becky Chambers is known for her slice of life science fiction. That's her writing style, and I've enjoyed what I've read so far. I have heard some people say that it kind of goes a bit downhill from book 3, but we'll see. I'll let you know. Review coming soon. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for further science fiction content to come.